You're listening to Searching for More, a podcast of the Diocese of Arlington. On this episode, Vice Admiral Andrew L. Woody Lewis, Commander of the U.S. Second Fleet and Commander of Joint Force Command Norfolk in the U.S. Navy, talks about his 35 years of service and how his faith sustains him through military life.
It is the thing that's going to get us through this, is faith and hope that there's light at the other end of the tunnel.
Hear Vice Admiral Lewis's incredible story of faith and service. This episode's host is Billy Atwell, Chief Communications Officer of the Diocese.
Vice Admiral Andrew Lewis, thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Thanks for the opportunity.
So I have to say, you have a really cool title. I want you to say it in a second, but your title makes me think of the movie Gladiator. Remember when Maximus Decimus Meridius, Commander of the Armies in the North, General of the Felix Legions. It just has this very powerful feel to it. So if you would, for listeners, talk through, I think you have two main titles there.
Yeah, so currently I'm the commander of the U.S. Second Fleet, and also the commander of Joint Force Command Norfolk. And so I'm a dual-hat commander, and the Joint Force Command Norfolk is a joint command within NATO. So I have two different bosses, one who's a NATO boss and one who is a U.S. Navy boss. So, but pretty much the same mission, more or less,
right,
and the same region, but two different commands.
Wow, and you're a 3-star general with the U.S. Navy. When you take on the post of a commander, does becoming a general go along with that, or how did you become a general within your career?
Well, so to be accurate, so as a flag and general officer within the United States military, so there's Navy general officers or titled admirals, so rear admiral, okay, lower half, rear admiral, upper half, and vice admiral. So I'm a 3-star. But and how it works is you get promoted basically through the system up until to 2-star, and then to 3-star is nominative positions that go along with a position. Some of those are command positions, some of those are staff positions. So that's kind of how it works, and it goes before goes before Congress. Gotcha. And all that kind of stuff. And in my case, in this particular command, I have to be confirmed in both roles, not
right
separately, because you get it's just because of the weird rules associated with that.
Right, and I mean your background is fascinating. You've done 11 deployments that were 6 to 8 months long. You've flown 100 combat missions through, Desert Storm, Southern Watch, Enduring Freedom, and so on, and received distinguished medals along the way. Knowing where you are now, would be interesting to know what first drew you to military service?
Well, I think I went to the U.S. Naval Academy when I was 18 in 1981, so I got drawn to the military service for a lot of the same reasons that most people do, is just for the opportunities that it presented to me. I had an opportunity to go to school. I had an opportunity to get to be challenged with some things that I'd never been exposed to before in the past, and an opportunity to I was a college athlete too, and I was able to compete at that level when I went to the Naval Academy. So all those things it was just a great opportunity for me. And then somewhere in kind of subconsciously, it was about doing something in service of the country and in service to the community. I think that's really what kept me in, and what's really motivated me over time to continue to serve in the military, is that just being able to serve the community and serve the country.
It was interesting. So we met you because of some mutual acquaintances through the Blessed Sacrament Bible study, and one of the trademarks, because you used to be a parishioner there, obviously, and know folks from there. And one of the trademarks that multiple people mention about you is that you're a humble guy, but your humility notwithstanding. Can you tell us about some of the the theaters you've served in and what you did, so our listeners kind of have a sense of the type of work you've been doing in these different theaters of combat?
Yeah, sure. I mean so my I was commissioned in 1985, and I'm an aviator by trade. So I went through the flight training down in Pensacola and in South Texas, and I was married about 6 months after I was commissioned, and my wife and I have 4 children, adult children now, and that when we moved back to Norfolk the last time, which is where we live now. That was our 29th move as a married family, and where we have lived. We've lived everywhere from Texas, California, to England, Florida, over to Japan, and then down into Alabama, several places in Virginia, and back out to California. So all over the place we've lived and served. Where I've deployed has been everywhere from the Western Pacific through into the Arctic, all throughout the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, and I've done a lot of deploying in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea, and on the ground there as well. And kind of where those deployments in which I was deployed during Desert Storm initially as a pretty junior officer, and then I was actually deployed coming back from deployment, or actually went through the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf on the 9th of September 2001 when I was a squadron executive officer, and then we turned around on the 11th and extended for a couple months there, and flew. I led a strike in Afghanistan, the first strikes in Afghanistan from the carrier, from the USS Enterprise, and then 2 years later, or a year and a half later, was deployed as a squadron commanding officer on another ship in the Mediterranean, Eastern Mediterranean, flying into Iraq, doing the same kind of thing. So it's
right.
I've been I guess exposed to a lot of operational and a lot of operational environments. And,
yeah. As a dad with young kids, a lot of what you said stuck out. But as a dad, what stuck out was you mentioned 29 moves. How I think people can imagine the challenges with moving that many times into different countries and things like that. But as a family, what were some of the benefits of the military life and the moves and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, the benefits by far outweigh the challenges. I mean, it is my kids. Like my oldest son, who lives in San Francisco, he was also in the Navy, went to the Naval Academy, graduated in 2009, spent about 5 years in the Navy, and then he worked in New York City for a hedge fund for a few years, and then he went to a graduate school at Stanford and works at a startup here in San Francisco. I have my youngest daughter lives in Colorado, in Denver. Spent a couple years after she graduated from college down in Honduras, she's kind of a professional do-gooder. And my oldest daughter is married with our first grandson. She lives in Charleston, South Carolina, with her family, and then our younger son, who was living in Colorado, was a craft brewer by trade, a head brewer at a little craft brewery out in Colorado until about 2-3 months ago, and he's moved back to Virginia Beach right now, and he's working and thinking pretty seriously about joining the Navy.
Oh, wonderful! That must make you proud.
Yeah, I mean the kids, they're our kids. I think really, they felt like they served in the military as they've grown up, but they've made, we have literally hundreds of friends and families that we can kind of bounce around the country and the world, frankly, with and stay with friends that we've made through the military. I mean, in fact, our younger boy, the Brewer, he lived in Australia for about 6-7 months here a couple years back, and he spent Christmas with an Australian family that we were next door neighbors with when we lived in England. So it's just it's kind of a network of people that you have a commonality of serving in the military and serving your communities and countries, and you kind of speak the same language, and it's very it's kind of a rich way of looking at things, I think.
When you look back on the experiences, one of the only common threads that would be between one move to the next is the family. And when you're stationed, quote unquote, in one place like most families are, you can lean on friends more and you can lean on other folks. You might even have extended family nearby and so on. But when you're moving as much as you are in the military life, especially yours, it seems like it would bind the family together in a very healthy way where you realize it's just us. All we have is each other. And that would be very healthy for the family dynamics. Yeah,
no question. And, I think like all families and like all young adults and, we have, nothing's picture perfect, but we always kind of go back to the root of the family that in our case is very much that's kind of it's our foundation for everything. It's kind of our family church, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we call it the domestic church, right? That's part of our teaching. And
my wife comes from a very large family of 6 girls, and they have an extended family that is gigantic. And and then we have a whole bunch of family that there aren't actually blood relatives, but they might as well be.
Right.
And that's and some of those are people that we become friends with because of the military. Some have become friends with because of connections to friends who are have been in the military, and so on and so forth. And it's just expanded over time. That makes it kind of, every place feels like home wherever you end up, and which is nice.
Now how old? Now you're a convert to the faith, is that right?
Yeah.
Was your wife a cradle Catholic?
She was.
Okay, so talk a little bit about where were you in your military life when you converted to Catholicism?
Well, so when I went to the Naval Academy, I was, like a lot of people, I was pretty homesick, and so I never really went to church growing up. I had, was baptized a Presbyterian, but never really attended church, and then on occasion. But when I went to the Naval Academy, it was an opportunity to kind of get away from things a little bit, and so I started going to non-denominational services at the Naval Academy, and then when I met the girl that I wanted to hang around with and ultimately wanted to marry, she was Catholic, so that's what drew me to faith initially, was getting married in the Catholic Church and going through that process. And then one of the things that we started having children, and one of the things that I had missed growing up was not going. I wanted to go to church as a family, and
right.
So that was my driver was converting initially to Catholicism, which was in 1989, so just 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, it's been, I guess like a lot of people, but, my conversion has been very, it's become more and more every year, various things that have happened over time that have really drawn me closer and closer to the faith, and in which, that my kids tease me all the time that I like to read a lot, and I read two types of books. I read war books and God books because, the things that I'm interested in, and from a professional standpoint is, books on leadership and books on biographies of military people, and then I read a lot of spiritual books that are, ultimately go back to the Bible, but
right.
But different reflections on things that I find to be very enriching. So.
Yeah, and those two categories aren't altogether, dissimilar, right? There's probably more overlap than you realize sometimes.
Yeah, in fact, the older I get, the more I realize the incredible overlap, frankly.
Yeah.
So.
When you look back on your military service, I'm sure you served with. I'm sure you've had your own just battles. I mean, internally, when flying these different combat missions and leading men and all that, where you struggled spiritually with something. And I'm sure you've worked or served with a lot of men who have, done things that were traumatizing or experienced something that was traumatizing, lost friends. How has your faith, because you converted fairly early on in your service, obviously, how did your faith play a role in your own healing from those types of things, as well as the way you were able to lead people and guide them through theirs? It's not an overstatement to say, it's the only thing that allowed me to work through those kind of things. I mean, I guess the way to, everything from, the first time I, was faced with a combat situation, we would go to mass on the ship, before flying the first missions in Desert Storm, which, we didn't really know what that was going to be like. I was a guy who was commissioned during the Cold War, I was never knew what it would be like actually, dropping bombs somewhere on a country that wasn't a training range, because it was, right.
We were looking at nuclear war prior to that. And, so it's kind of it was a very surreal experience in that, so going, at the faith was like hugely important. And then, as I've gotten more exposed to different things and more, situations where, pressure or loss of life, I've lost a number of compatriots and friends in combat scenarios and training scenarios in which, it takes a lot of courage, I guess, or moral courage to overcome, the tendency to want to fold in on yourself and feel sorry for yourself.
Right.
You have to kind of go forward and keep moving. And most recently, this was the case with some people that I served with and that worked for me, and I worked with that let the pressure of the job they were doing overcome them, and they didn't deal with it in a way that was healthy. In fact, a destructive way.
Yeah.
In which that I find my faith is critical to be able to help families that deal with loss. and help those that that are left behind when their loved ones get either get taken at an early age, or they in a couple of cases people have taken their own lives. That's something that we've got to deal with in our society, that and in our military as well, that we're not dealing with very well right now, and we've got to get our arms around it. I think the faith is just, it is the thing that's going to get us through this. Is faith and hope that there's light at the other end of the tunnel, which seems to be flickering out with some people. That's just not willing to let that happen.
Yeah, when you would be on a boat somewhere, obviously there's a stress to your work that's inherent. Did you have Catholic chaplains typically available to you on those ships?
Yeah, normally the aircraft carriers will have a priest on board, and then some of the larger ships will have priests, the military archdiocese is struggling for priests, just like there a lot of dioceses are in the United States. Arlington tends to be, as you know, a pretty vibrant diocese. And they contribute a lot of the military priests. U.S. military priests come from the Arlington diocese,
right?
And they, they're just unbelievable. The things that they do, and they, I find it to be really just awesome, because they've got they do daily mass on the ship. They'll go throughout the different ships and fly around and offer mass to as many places as they can on the out in the field, in austere locations. It's a vocation within a vocation, obviously, and great admiration for those priests and for all the chaplain corps. A huge supporter of the chaplain corps, and it's a source of strength that is often taken for granted until it's not there, and then it really struggles.
I mentioned before that you're part of the men's study at Blessed Sacrament Parish here in Alexandria, at least when you were living in Northern Virginia. So when you've not been deployed, when you've been stateside, what has the role of the parish community been like for you? Because I would imagine, and again, I'm speculating here, but it would be sometimes hard to connect, because these aren't necessarily people that have had the same experiences and challenges that you do, and you never know when you're going to get up and move again. So how do you kind of make those deep personal connections with the Catholic community when at any minute you could get picked up and sent off again? So the two questions are, I guess, how did parish life, or does parish life when you're stateside, help you? And then how do you adjust and really invest yourself when you could be leaving any time?
Well, parish life, is, it's the thing about it is you've got to, I think, the individual military people come into, civilian parishes, wherever they are. You have to jump in with both feet, and be a part of the parish. And by and large, well, actually, in every case, wherever we've lived, some of the parishes we go to are on the military basis. Some of them are not. And when you jump in with both feet, the vast majority of these parishes are like, hey, this is great. Another people who want to be be an altar server, be a, like my kids, we were always doing that, or be a lector, be a, Eucharistic minister, or whatever the case may be, and did all that kind of thing. And then you get involved in the various ministries within the, that are more, that have more time commitment. And those are, I found them to be a lot of fun, I guess. But and then the specifics with Blessed Sacrament, we went there. We lived in Cameron Station twice on two separate occasions, 2011 and 12, and then came back in 2015. And when we were there in 2011, the pastor was now Monsignor Cregan, who was a retired Marine.
Right.
And so, he had been there for a little while, and he was, so I was always talking about military stuff anyway. And there's plenty of people in that parish that, whether they're serving in the military, there's some that are doing other government service. There are some that are doing community service, and it's all kind of related to service. And there's a lot of commonality with that men's group and with the parish there. So I found it to be really easy, and the community was very accepting. And liked having the extra helping hands around, which makes it for fun for all of us. I guess if you worry about leaving, next week, you kind of lose sight of this week.
Yeah.
And that's so you dive in and make it a home from day one.
Yeah.
And then we have every place we've left, sad to leave, but it's kind of like until we meet again type of program.
Yeah.
And I go, when I'm up in D.C., which is on occasion, I'll pop into Blessed Sacrament, and I actually went to a men's group, a month or so back, and they're always happy for me to hang out and eat the breakfast for free, like everybody else does.
Yeah.
So there, that particular men's group, I'll just tell you, when I came back in 2015, I came straight from deployment, and I was going to a job at the Joint Staff. So I was the Deputy Director for Operations on the Joint Staff. So it's obviously not a combat position, but to work in the Pentagon on the Joint Staff in the Operations Directorate is really high paced. It's there's a lot of stuff going on, and it can be pretty pressurizing.
Mm-hmm.
That next year, I flew off the ship in Bahrain in the summer of 2015. Showed up for work, and then the next year, 2016, my sister-in-law passed away in March of 2016. My father passed away in June.
Oh.
A very close family friend passed away in October, and my older brother passed away in November of 2016.
Oh, my Lord.
And my wife, who was, my mother passed away years ago, and my wife spent a lot of time with my father and with my friends, and I was kind of I kind of took care of my older brother. He was lived on the streets in California and stuff, so I was the only one who actually had contact with him, and so it was a pretty hard time where I was, going through a lot of sad times, and
a lot of suffering,
going through some turmoil with my family life. And my kids were all doing different things and having their various challenges as well. And the men's group was hugely, it was a lifesaver for me. And just by virtue of, you can just come there on Saturday mornings and, shoot the breeze about one thing or another and kind of depressurize to some degree and, get up the next morning and get after it again.
I spoke at the men's group a few weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, and that's how I heard about you, because I mentioned to them, we're looking for some people to interview related to Veterans Day. It's coming up and all that. And I would have thought you were there every week. The way they talked about you, you were like family to them. They obviously still care about you a lot. You're one of their brothers for sure.
Yeah, it's a neat place, and it's I'm forever in debt to that group of people, just by it's obviously it's Jesus working through everybody else,
right.
and that's what kind of resonated, I guess, resonates with everybody. I remember one day in particular, I used to swing by, because I would get to work at about 6:20 every day, and so I would drive by Blessed Sacrament, and the priest would open up at about 6 every morning, because it was a 6:30 daily mass. So I would go in to the Blessed Sacrament Chapel for about 5 minutes on my way to work, just to get my head right. There was one time I think I went to morning mass. I went to 6:30 mass. I didn't have to go to work whatever day it was. And a guy that was in men's group was there, and I used to see him every once in a while at the Pentagon at daily mass, and he comes up to me and I can't even remember his name, to be honest with you, but he comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'm praying for you." I said, "Thanks," and it was the day before my father died. And
wow.
I was like, and I was like, it was, those kind of things, they don't happen by accident,
right?
Because I didn't look any, I wasn't, looking like I was in mourning or anything like that. I was just there like I was a lot of times, and
right.
This guy just, so. That kind of thing is really, I don't know, it's just reflective of, when people are focused on somebody other than themselves.
Yeah, that's service.
In a good way, then, it really has.
Yeah.
It really has a positive effect. So I don't know. There was just a lot of little things like that happened that amounted to pretty big things as far as I was concerned. So
yeah, if you were approached by a young man or woman, and maybe you have been, who's looking to enter, military life in whatever branch, when it comes to, faith, let's assume they're a Catholic, but what would be your advice to them in order for them to succeed in the military, but also really maintain their spiritual life? What would be a piece of faith-related advice you might have for them?
I don't know that I'm qualified necessarily to give any advice, but I would say that what I've done over time. Now, this is I've been in the Navy for a while now, and this is my 6th time in command. So had a few command positions, and I've always kind of I've gone about leadership positions in the same way, and in the same approach to it. In that, whereas my priority is the mission and the mission of the command and the military, and then that's my one mission. But you can't actually achieve the mission unless you're building leadership and you're a good follower and a good team player. The difference between military leadership and financial leadership or running a company or something like that is it's all about, you've got to be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's what military leadership is all about, and motivating other people to do it as well. And that's really easy to say and really hard to actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part is, live by the golden rule, and which that is consistent with all religions, and that treating others like you want to be treated, and you get the most out of people, and if you treat one another right. But that's kind of how I approach the job. And then I look at things from a vocational standpoint. So I'm pretty open about this with everybody that I talk to, because it's not about proselytizing or anything like that. But my universal vocation is to know, love, and serve God. My primary vocation is as a husband, a father, a brother, a friend. And then my secondary vocation is what I do for work and what I do to make the world a better place, and where my talents lie. And that happens to be in my case, and with everybody who serves in the military, we're lucky because our secondary vocation, serving in the military, is service. So it's coincident with our primary vocation and our universal vocation is service to others, and service to an ideal, service to the to support and defend the Constitution and the country, and so it's really all that thread is consistent, and it's what makes as a I believe a man or woman of faith is a much better more effective leader is an effective leader. The more your leadership style simulates the best leader there is, the more that you try to copy what kind of leader that Jesus was or Jesus is, the better off you're going to be.
Right.
I mean, the better, more effective. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of that.
Right.
So that's kind of the advice is
very good.
That kind of servant leadership, if you want to coin it a certain way, or that's what it's all about. I mean, if you read anything about or talk to anybody who are considered effective leaders in the military, especially, they all have, whether they talk about it or not, they all have some pretty strong faith. I mean, I could tell you firsthand some of the leadership that I've served under in the last number of years, or have a very strong faith, and it's what draws people to want to not let them down.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to do this podcast. I know your schedule is short. You're on just a few short days of leave here, but you dedicated some time to this, and I'm grateful for it. The listeners are grateful for it, the faithful of this diocese, and we're also so grateful for your service. All the service you've talked about, you've lived for 35 years now, and we can't thank you enough for all that you've done. Stuff that you'll that we'll never know about. Missions you flew that, are never, shared publicly, but which kept us safe and kept us in good condition so we can sleep peacefully at night. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. It was nice to be able to talk to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're listening to Searching for More. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a review on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Also, make sure you follow the Diocese and the Arlington Catholic Herald on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And subscribe to our YouTube channels for regular videos that inspire, educate, and inform about the Catholic faith in our diocesan community.